Alrighty, you pump your tank every few years like you should, as a good homeowner does, but I want to talk to you about why it's also really important to make sure that you have the system inspected every 5 to 10 years. So let's get into it. So today we have ourselves a fun one where we have a house that was built in the early 80s. Everything was well maintained. The homeowner has taken great care of the house. Well looks fine, pressure tank looks good, septic's looking good, except we have a problem. So this particular house, the homeowner's lived here by himself for the last 5-10 years, and he gets it pumped every 3 years, and he's religious about it, keeps real good notes on it. Great, that's what we want to see. But we came out because they're having a property transfer, and all of a sudden we start looking at the pipes, and we have a problem with one of the pipes between the tank and the dry wells. So let's go ahead and look at the actual situation, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about what's going on. So what we're looking at right here, this is going to be the back of the tank. We have the front of the tank over here with the cast iron clean out. It is just below the surface. Fun little tidbit is they were using a flower pot as the lid. Always fun when I see that happening. But this is going to be the back of our tank. We can see inside of here that we have our concrete baffle. All that looks normal, but you see all that black staining right there? That is going to be from where the water level has risen in the past. Now, we put a little bit of water in and it backed up. You can see the top of the outlet line right here. You're probably asking yourself, what does this mean, right? What on earth could possibly be going on? So whenever you have a septic system, you're gonna have at least 2 parts, sometimes more, right? In this particular circumstance, we have ourselves a tank and 2 dry wells. So the tank is just a big concrete box. We've covered these in the past. Basically, its sole purpose is to capture the solids, clarify the liquid, and make it to where you're not putting sludge into your absorption system. In this particular circumstance, we have ourselves what are called dry wells acting as the absorption system. A dry well is the old school version of a drain field. We don't use them as much nowadays because they're very labor and cost intensive. It's way cheaper and way faster to install a drain field. So that's why nowadays we use drain fields, leach fields, whatever. There's a bunch of different names for them, but in this particular circumstance, we have pits. Now these pits are really, really large holes in the ground. Usually they're about 6 to 8 feet diameter, 6 to 10 feet deep, and they're basically lined with cinder block and stone. And so what happens is you flush the toilet, the heavy stuff goes to the tank, stays there, and the liquid's got to go somewhere. That liquid will then discharge into the pits. The pit will let the water into the ground, and nature's cycle continues, right? Now, when this guy is pumping it, most pumpers aren't looking to see, is everything draining the way that it's supposed to drain? They usually just pop the lid open, suck the hose in, and suck all the junk out of the tank. Call it a day. No shade at the pumpers, I get it. They've got a lot of calls and a lot of houses they got to get to. They're not there to sit there and look through every piece, but it is going to be important that they look to see, do we see any staining? That's why I'm a huge advocate of your pumper needs to be looking, is the baffle there? They need to have a mirror and a flashlight, and they need to give you some kind of paperwork to tell you, what did we see when we got here? For example, in this tank, we can see the staining. We just looked at that a few seconds ago. You can see it clearly from the clean out. So that means is that whoever's been pumping the tank's not looking to see if it's been staining. Now, it is very possible that between the most recent cleaning and now, the pipe had an issue. But usually whenever you get staining like that, that means that something's been going on for quite a while. So let's talk a little bit about what could be causing this. When you have a house from the 1980s, you're usually going to come across cast iron piping. Now, that was the most common type of pipe material used for sewer lines at this time period in this county. That's just what everybody used. PVC wasn't really there or readily available at that time period. So we have cast iron piping from the tank to a distribution box. Usually as cast iron piping ages, it'll start to pit and kind of squeeze in on itself. So the piping diameter will slowly shrink. And also if you're not pumping the tank enough, this particular circumstance, they pump it frequently, so that shouldn't be the issue. But the piping will eventually start to kind of close in on itself. Over the course of many years, that pipe will close in to where water cannot get out. And as cast iron ages, it starts to get brittle. So snaking it, you run the risk of cracking or damaging the pipe. So usually the most common issue I see for this type of house, this type of age system, and type of pipe material is a collapsed pipe or a collapsed distribution box. Now, we've covered distribution boxes in the past, but basically the short of what they are, it's just a little concrete box where you have the pipe from the tank, goes to the box, the liquid slows down, disperses into your different legs of absorption system. In this particular circumstance, we've got 2 pits, so the distribution box exists to basically allow the wastewater into either of those pits. So that could also be part of our issue. It could also be the lines from the distribution box to the pits. Now, in this particular circumstance, we tossed the camera through. It's definitely the pipe between the tank and the box, because that pipe is not able to be passed with a camera, right? Makes it super straightforward and simple. As a pumper, though, you'll never notice these sorts of things unless you're running water. As a normal going, as a homeowner, you should consider getting a more thorough inspection every 5 or 10 years. Septic systems fail slowly. They don't just overnight have problems. Sometimes they do, but usually whenever that's the case, it's going to be groundwater related. So like, for example, if you are by a river and all of a sudden it just starts backing up and failing, well, if it's been raining heavy for the last 10 days and the river's higher, you might have a water table problem. But if you're at the top of the hill and all of a sudden you just see that you've got sewage coming out of your toilet whenever you take a shower or flush the upstairs toilet, you probably have a clog. Almost every time that happens, it's always something stuck between the house and the tank, causing that immediate backup. Easy enough to fix, but never fun, because you got sewage in your basement or your bathroom. It's never a good time. So you want to make sure you get your system looked at every few years. You may be asking, well, how do I pick the person to inspect the system or maintain the system? And that's a hard question to answer, right? I always recommend go to Google, type in septic inspections, septic installers, something of that variety, and then look at the reviews. Now, as an installer, you want to be careful with installers, right? Because some of them are not going to give you the facts on the ground. They will just make up whatever. So I always advise, pick somebody who's willing to do an inspection without having the ability to get the repair work. For example, when I do an inspection, I don't want the work. The reason why is I don't want you thinking that I'm finding an issue to make money. I want to tell you, hey, here's what's going on, fix it or don't fix it, but this is how you ought to go about dealing with this problem. Now, there are other companies such as like home inspectors and stuff that can offer these services, but you need to be careful, right? So in Maryland, it's a regulated septic inspection. So you have to be licensed, trained, and you have to report to the wastewater board. So it's important to make sure that if you're getting an inspection done, especially from somebody who's not got like septic in their name, mainly it's home inspectors that are like that, but no shade against them. If they're doing it, that's fine. You just got to make sure that they're licensed and are following all proper procedures. Real simple. If you go to the Maryland Department of the Environment, they have a very large list of all of the state licensed installers and service providers, as well as inspectors. Makes it super simple. Now, you can also be Pennsylvania certified, but you still have to hold the Maryland license in order to do the inspections. It's a little goofy, but that's just how we do it in our state. We like to be goofy. Outside of this state, I'm not 100% sure, but if you start calling around, asking around, mostly if you have a licensed installer, the odds of them carrying a license to inspect is pretty high. If you're in, like, for example, Virginia, I have no idea what the rules are over there. You might have a home inspector who does septic inspections, but there may not be a septic inspecting course or a license or any kind of like parameters. So you just have to be careful, right? Google is a really, really powerful source, but you can pay to be the first number. So be careful whenever you're looking up these people. So I know we covered a lot of ground, and I know that this is kind of one of those complicated subjects, but I hope that you found this informative. If you gained any value from this conversation or you found this interesting in any way, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I have more videos posted every day on the World on Septic, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon.